Brennan Reece, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Anytime that you're performing in Scotland, whether it's your own show or at the Fringe or supporting like mutual friend Luke Kidgel, you're like you're the person that I always buy tickets for.
Oh, thanks.
Me and my sister were huge fans, so the fact that I saw you in Glasgow, I had to reach out, slide in your DMs. I even asked Luke to send you a message, and I was like, you responded by that point. So I thought I was going to go into your message requests, but you saw it really quickly. So, mate, thanks for coming on the show.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
I popped in to see you at the stand last night, and it was such a funny gig. I don't like to talk about gigs that no one can see that are listening to the podcast, but last night you were rushed on stage by the loveliest woman.
Yeah, a woman probably mid-50s. She was. I mean, it was a Saturday night in Glasgow, so she was pretty gone. But she, at one point she just decided. I think I made a joke about her, like a friendly joke, that she couldn't get on the stage, and then she decided to show that she really could, which the audience loved, and it was great.
Does that happen much before?
Not like the people aren't usually as close to the stage, but yeah, over the years there's been different, like good and bad, where I don't mind it if you can sense that someone is coming on for a laugh and you can make fun of the situation. So like I've had it a few times where that's been all right, but then occasionally you do get people like I remember once, it's maybe like 2012, where I was strangled on stage by a guy who just didn't like me, and the audience just didn't really do anything. Just someone was like, "Get off." So that made me a bit more cautious of like, you can't just say anything.
What did you do to piss him off?
I was doing a gig at a football club, and I think he thought I was gay, and so I just sort of called him out. He kept heckling, and he called me something, and I sort of leant into him and was like, "Oh, do you not like gay people?" And then the next minute, my back was on a table, and he was strangling me, which is wild.
And did was there security?
No.
Oh fuck!
No. When you're just there on your own, and people don't know whether it's part of the show, what to do. They think you should sort of handle it yourself, so you just go, yeah. Like I can't remember what I even did. I think I just carried on talking into the microphone, maybe. Yeah,
that's wild, mate.
Yeah.
As always on this podcast, man, I love to take it back to the beginning, the origin story. Growing up in Manchester, what was your first foray into the performing arts?
So I was kind of like, so where I grew up is like I just grew up in a place called Ashton-under-Lyne, quite a rough council estate-y type place. Youngest of three, brother 10 years older, my sister 7 years older. So they were already trying to, when I was a kid, they were already trying to find their feet in what they wanted to do. So my sister was doing quite a lot of dance stuff, and my brother was going to like a youth theatre. And I don't know how, because my mum and dad are not, like, they're not creative in that way. Like my mum just worked on bars and did deliver like Meals on Wheels. My dad worked in a battery factory for like 30 years. So I think I sort of learned it by osmosis that was a thing you could do. And then my brother was doing all right as a teenager, like auditioning for stuff and getting in like TV shows. So they needed in a TV show that he was playing a part in someone to play him like 10 years younger. And his agent was like, well, he looks the same and he's 10 years younger. So I got the part, and he was probably said about 3 lines. But I think as a 6-year-old, you go like, oh, maybe even, I might have even been like 4. You're like, oh, this is fun because there's lights and there's cameras. And so then I'd go up for more auditions, and then ended up in bits and bobs, like some TV shows.
Heartbeat, right?
Yeah, I did Heartbeat. So I was off school for a little bit of that, which was fun. And I think of what other things I did. And it was great. Like, it just was like mucking about. So then I joined like a youth theatre thing. Did youth theatre till I went to like, maybe till about 16. And then I was like, I really want to be an actor. So I just like auditioned for like drama school and all that. Went to drama school. First few years out of drama school, didn't stop working. I was doing like musical stuff, and then I was doing, I did a few films and bits and bobs. And you're like, oh, this is great. And then the work stopped, and I was like, oh, right. Because sometimes, like, when you finish an acting job, it just ends. Like, there's no like progression. So you like, then you go back to auditioning again. And then I was auditioning and then not getting a part, and then not getting another part. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I'd always loved stand-up. I didn't know you could do it as a job. I just loved loved it. I remember when I was about 18 and I went to the Birmingham Glee to go and watch it for like my birthday or something like that. And I was just like, this is amazing. This is cool. So I guess it had always been bubbling at the back of my mind that comedy was a thing. I would always play like comedy parts in stuff. So I just wanted to try it once. So I'd sign up to do like a gong show where, if people don't know, it's like if you go on stage, there's loads of brand new comedians. 3 people in the crowd get given a card. And if they all lift the card up before you finish the 5 minutes, you get kicked off the stage. So I did one in Preston, which is about an hour away from where I grew up, because I knew that no one would be there to see it if it was bad. And then weirdly enough, a friend of mine was just there, not to see me, he was just there. So there was a bit of added pressure. And then the first one went really well. And I was like, oh, right, okay, maybe I'll do it again. So I did another one a few days later, and then that went really well. And then I did a third one, and that went really well. And I was like, well, maybe I'm good at this. Maybe I'm just... And I kind of had a little advantage because I was used to being on stage already. So that's most people's fear, is like getting up in front of a crowd and it's not the writing bit. So I had no real written jokes. I wasn't very good at the writing side, but the other bit, I could just perform really easily. So like first 3 gigs, I was like, I think I might be amazing. I think I might. And then the 4th gig was one of the worst gigs I've ever had. Because it was like in a snooker hall. Yeah, the guy who run the gig had a wireless microphone at the back, and he was like heckling acts on the microphone. He'd booked like too many acts, so the night was going on for ages. And I remember like that first death, I was dying so bad that I heard like behind the curtain a snooker ball tap another snooker ball. And I was like, oh great, cool. So
they don't even like crowds in it. Snooker matches never mind comedians in the room.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but I think because within a couple of weeks, I'd had 3 really good gigs to go, oh, you can do this. And then 1 bad gig to go, but you need to work really hard at it, was probably a nice little sort of foundation to start off with, where I was like, you're not just going to get it given to you. And realizing that every single comedian that anyone's ever seen, whether it's like Mickey Flanagan, Peter Kay, Catherine Ryan, everyone's died. Everyone's gone through the system and done all the clubs, and everyone's died on stage at some point. So you're like, right, it's fine. I can do it again.
And they all say like you learn from your bad gigs more than you do your good ones.
It's like anything in life, isn't it? Like you just learn from when things are bad. You either lean into it and you go, right, well, I guess I'm a victim now and everything's rubbish and the world's against me, which I've been that person before. Or you go, right, how do I improve? How do I get better? And that's so the harder way, but that's how people progress.
So interesting that you had like your brother and your sister already in like performing arts domains, and that kind of allowed you to see that you could do that too. Like I grew up in a council estate as well, and any other lad that I knew that did some sort of drama or acting, and like even me for doing skateboarding growing up, I was told either, like they're called gay or a girl. But do you think that helped having like your family already walking that path? Yeah,
like I know. Also, I just didn't care. Like I went to quite a rough all boys school for secondary school.
Is that a thing? A rough all boys school?
Yeah, in the north. That's
really?
Most of them. Yeah.
Really?
They're just like split up because they're just, I guess maybe the teen pregnancy rates were so high. But yeah, all boys and all girls schools in the northwest of England that's what they mainly are, but they're not good. Yeah, it's not like private-y.
Yeah, that's my perception of it.
Yeah, like, no, it's like
St. Trinian's almost.
Like, no, it's like juvenile prison. Just fights every day, and yeah, it was horrible. So when I was like into drama, it was like, you're gay, and I go, okay. Like I've never really been bothered that someone would think I'm gay because I'm camp anyway, and I was always a bit of a show off. And also, when it just doesn't make any sense when like lads who were like playing sports and hanging around each other, and they're like, oh, that thing that you do on a Wednesday night where it's just you and 70 girls is really gay. And you're like, okay, it's really gay, I guess. So I was never really fussed about that, and maybe it is because my brother. I can't really remember much of that growing up, but he might have been good for going like, oh, don't worry about that, and seeing how he was fine. But having a family who were sort of in the arts, my mum and dad never like questioned. They were never like, well, you can't do that. Go and get a proper job. They were just like, if you're gonna do it properly. You have to. Like when I said I wanted to be a comedian, my mum was just like, do it. You've got to properly do it though. You can't just like half-ass it and live at home and not pay any rent. So I was zipping it like, a couple of months in, I was zipping around the country everywhere, 5 gigs a week. I'd do a gig anywhere for no money, because that's the only way that you get good. Like you hear lots of like newer comics being like, how do you do it? Like the hard way. You have to put the reps in. It's like people who are like, I don't want to be big. I want a 6-pack. You're like, well, we all know how you do it. I haven't got a 6-pack because I haven't followed the things of getting a 6-pack. So I just followed what happened on the circuit.
And comedy is like especially in like the arts world, like the most meritocratic one, because it's just you, a man and a microphone or a woman and a microphone. Like you don't, I mean, there might be a bit of nepotism in the industry, but in comparison to like acting or these other industries, I can't imagine it's just as bad. You just have to, like you said, put the reps in, get noticed, refine your craft, travel the country, lose money on your gigs, do a gong show and get gonged off after a minute and get the bus back home. Do you think that's why you preferred comedy to maybe the world of acting, or do you think I'm just casting assumptions because you're working class?
I don't know, because with it is a meritocracy to a certain extent. I think the internet's changed it a bit because people can now go on a tour based on a viral video or a bit of crowd work. So some people get to leapfrog, but I think the ones who are really good, who stick around for ages, have gone through the whole system. But I think when you're on stage, it's a complete meritocracy, because I've seen famous people go on and they get 5 minutes grace period because everyone goes, oh my God, it's them off the thing. But if they've not done the work, if they've not brought the gear, the audience can quickly turn on them. So I think when you're on stage, it's 100% meritocracy, because if you're funny, then they like it. No one's going, it's really funny, but it's just not for me. So the reason why I don't know, I like both sides, but I like stand-up more because I think you're just a bit more in control of what you do. There's no one passing you a thing and going, do you want to be in River City? And you go, my dream is actually to be, I don't know, in a Ken Loach film, but you have to do River City because you have to pay your bill. Where I think with stand-up, you're always doing the job, whether you're doing it in a room above a pub or at the Hydro. Like, I've done both, and they're the exact same job. There's just more seats in a room. Yeah.
I love that. What was drama school like? Like, I did a couple of drama classes in high school, and either I was playing a tree or someone that was being peer pressured into taking drugs.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what does drama school entail? Is it more
just that, basically, but it's just more complex trees, bigger trees and harder drugs. No, it's like, I love some of it and I hated some of it. Because I was like 18, I'd moved away from home, so I kind of loved that I was not. I moved to Birmingham. That's where I went to drama school. So I'm 18, which feels too young to just be sent off to a different city. Although I guess if you speak to like someone who was sent away during the Blitz, they'll probably I've worse things to say. But I loved like meeting like my people, especially going to like a rough secondary school where I don't think I speak to anyone from secondary school. And it wasn't like hell every day, but they just weren't my people. They just weren't into what I was into. So then to meet like 30 people who were your whole year, and people have come from all over the world, different backgrounds. I'd probably never met anyone who was rich before, like who was from like a really rich background. So I was like, it was really exciting. I just wanted like to experience all of it. So that was great. But also I was just too young to be at drama school. I was just dicking around. Any opportunity to make a joke, which in the long run, it was always there. Yeah. But any opportunity to fanny about, to have time off. I'm not really great with like having a boss and having someone tell me what to do. So when I was at school, I just wouldn't do the work. At college, I got into drama school, so I didn't need to do well in my A levels. At drama school, there was no one saying, well, you do have to come in. So sometimes I just wouldn't. Because I just wanted to experience, what I probably should have done was go on like traveling or something, I don't know. But it just wasn't in the remit of what people would do from where I'm from. So when I was at drama school, it was more about just going out and having a great time. I didn't really do the work that well. I could get by enough because I could act well enough. I was never the best at anything, but I was never the worst. So it was kind of like a big 3-year holiday. And then sometimes we'd have to do like ballet classes and Tai Chi type things. And I'd just be like, this is shit. And if I look back now, I probably would have really benefited from, like if I was there now, I'd love all that stuff. But I guess that's the hindsight of having, I started drama school 20 years ago.
Wow.
So yeah, different person now.
What type of acting gigs did you pick up post drama school? I know you did Heartbeat as a kid.
So I did Heartbeat as a kid. So the first one I did, I left drama school and walked straight into a job where I filmed for like 3 months on a film about Northern Soul, which is, I love Northern Soul music. It's kind of built into the culture of being from the Northwest. Because in the 70s, they had this like huge, what did they have? They had this huge club called Wigan Casino where it was voted the best club in the world at one point. It was this huge club. Everyone on Northern Soul dance. It opened on Friday and people would stay till Sunday. So I got this job, learned how to do Northern Soul dancing. I was taught off a Glaswegian guy actually called Keb Daj, who was like, he looked like he could kick your head in, but he was also like disco dancing champion 1973.
That's Glasgow for you.
He's incredible. Like, and there's like YouTube videos of this guy just dancing around. So it was like I really landed on my feet. It was like a first real nice independent film, period film. And like there was lots of actors on their way up. So like people like Felicity Jones was in it, and she's she's been nominated for an Oscar a couple of times. She's amazing. And what's he called? Why has he gone out of my head? Scottish actor in Line of Duty, absolutely sound. Martin Compston. And he was like the soundest guy. And he was only a couple of years older than me, I think. And I was like, oh, you can really make it work. So I made some good mates out of that. And so I did that for a couple of months, then walked into another job and toured around the UK doing a musical show called the Quadrophenia, which is The Who. So The Who would come around with us, and it was, again, me and like 16 people under 25, all being paid maybe like 600 quid a week. And we're like, I think I might be rich. And 600 quid's still like good money, but you're like, I thought I was loaded. So I'd just piss all that up the wall. Every week would be in a different place. So we'd do like the King's Theatre in Glasgow, and then we'd be over at the Festival Theatre in Edinburgh. Then we'd go up to Aberdeen, and then go down to Sunderland, and then to Plymouth, and then to Belfast. And I thought I was like a rock star. So I did that, did a few more bits in like TV dramas, acting with some amazing people like Paddy Considine and Helen McCrory. And you go, fuck, I'm living the dream. And then, as I said, like when it stops. And you're just like, you're back in the queue and you go for auditions. And then when you don't get them, you're going like, I've fucked all that money up the wall. Probably should have put it somewhere. And then you just like move back home with your mum and go and work in a bar somewhere.
Being on stage in places like the King's Theatre and these bigger theatres across the country, that must have, I'm presuming that would have allowed you to be more comfortable doing stand-up. Like,
yeah.
A lot of first-time comics, they might have really good writing, but their performance abilities aren't that great because they've just not been on stage before. Yeah. Did that serve you well? Do you think that's what allowed you to be like the kind of golden boy with the Midas touch at first?
I think so. I think, confidence holds a lot of weight in anything. Even with like footy, and if like, there's a stat about players that are confident when it comes to penalties, they're just the ones that you want because everyone else just starts second guessing it. But it's just like being at home. Like I imagine when you go home, you just feel more comfortable. You can kick your shoes off. You know what's in the fridge. You know what's there. So when you're on stage, having a microphone in your face doesn't feel alien. And weirdly enough, lots of people who go into stand-up come from like politics degrees, law degrees, local radio, and they're not quite used to having the people watching. They're not used to interacting with people. And I think also where I've come from, like stories and jokes and humor are like currency because no one's got anything. So I was always used to like holding court with like my mum and dad's friends and going, oh, at school, this thing happened, and probably doing a bit. You'd be like telling that story again and again. So I think I was sort of secretly like primed to be like comfortable on stage doing stand up. I was nervous, but I wasn't. I knew I'd be fine.
When you got signed to an agent, I heard watched a story online whereby you were promised a sum of money and they didn't pay you, and you had to go into the offices to reclaim it.
Oh yeah. Well, I was promised money. I was promised money that I'd earned. I'd done the job, and then the money would go obviously from the promoter to the agent to the act. And it was a really big agency, and the agent just wasn't paying me or the other acts. And they ended up getting fired in the end, but I got dropped before she got fired, and she was just siphoning money off. And again, like, I think where you grow up really defines how you behave in those situations. And if someone hadn't paid my dad for doing a week's work, I don't think my dad would have just gone, well, you know, it is what it is. He probably would have gone in and kicked off. So I went to London. Excuse me. I went to London and kicked off. And they dealt with it in a very London way, a very corporate way. And were like, you're a problem. I'm like, well, I'm not the problem. I've not been paid. So yeah, that's why that happened.
Was that your first agent?
It was my first agent in comedy. So I had an acting agent from drama. Like I got them from drama school because you do like a showcase at the end of your like degree where all the agents and all the casting directors come and see who's new. A bit like how they have like the draft in like NFL and NBA. And then I got an agent from it. So I was with that agent for a good 2008 to like 2014. So a good 6 years. And she was awesome. She was really kind. Got me work, got me auditions. And then when comedy was just taking over a little bit more, so 2014, I was a couple of years in, I was just like, I want an agent who can do both. And in the end, I picked an agent who could do none of the above. And they had a really good roster and lost them all. And some of those people are massive now.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Did that like almost deter you from continuing a career in comedy?
Yeah, I nearly quit. It was my mum that talked me out of it. So I just thought that was it. I'd turned down other agents. It was the first time I'd ever really hit a stumbling block in comedy where it's like, oh, maybe this won't go the way that I want. And I'm not quite sure what I mean by that. I think it was because the route then, there was no like viral clips or internet. So it's like, you do the gigs, you become a professional comedian, you do the circuit, you go up to Edinburgh, you maybe try and get nominated and all that stuff, and then you end up on the telly. So that was like the thing. So I think that's what I was probably trying to do. And then when it sort of felt like it had fallen apart quite quick, like within a few hours, I was like, oh, fuck this. Again, not probably dealing well with having someone who's in control of what I do. So I just rang my mum and I was like, I think I'm done with this. I'll just do I had a few more gigs and I was like, I think I might bin it off. And then she was like, well, just see how you feel. And then a few weeks later, they did I think I'd applied for maybe like a few competitions that I'd not done, like the BBC New Comedy Award, was knocked back for like a third year. I think I'd done applied to being like the English Comedian of the Year, couldn't even get on one of the heats. And I was like, oh. And then a few weeks after being dropped from my agent, not really gigging, I was asked whether there was a dropout and someone said, oh, do you want to come to the Midlands and do an English Comedian of the Year heat? And I was like, no. My mum was like, just do it. Like, if it doesn't go well, you'll be in this position. So you're not lost anything. So then I went and did it. And then I won the competition. And then that's what allowed. So this would have been 2015, sorry. So I won the competition, and part of the prize was you get to go to Australia and do all the festivals. So then I did all the festivals in like 2016, from like January to April. which allowed me to do like an hour every day away from everyone else to work on the show. And it was my first show. And then I went up to Edinburgh and was like nominated for Best Newcomer.
Fuck.
So you're like, I could have really been that off. But if you don't surround yourself with the people that are like, you're like cheerleaders, and it doesn't have to be like mums and dads, it can be anyone. I don't know what I would have done something else.
Not to be so cliche, but have you seen that internet meme or graphic, and it's like two guys digging for gold, and then one guy kind of walks away
just before he gets to it. Yeah.
It's so cliche and wanky like that, but that was essentially that moment.
Totally.
For you.
And it also might have taken another 5 years digging. It depends what route you're on. I see so many new acts now who are just like, they want like that secret sauce. They want the recipe, and you go, the recipe is just gig and write and gig. That's all you can do.
Do you think it's the TikTokification of comedy? Because we can go online and see Matt Rife doing a bit of crowd work and instantly think that we can go up and do that as like for example, for me, like a new open mic, open spot comic.
Yeah.
Do you think that's caused that sense of entitlement?
I think so. And also it can happen. But I think that's with everything. I don't just think it's with comedy. I think people want whatever they want to eat delivered to their door at whatever time they want. And relationships, you see like people fall in love and earn 100 grand in a beautiful villa on Love Island in 7 weeks. You go, well, my boyfriend doesn't do that. You go, yeah, because he's working a 9 to 5 and you live in fucking People's. Like everyone wants that thing. And I've been that person. I'm like, I want it now. You're like, you've not earned it. I think everyone wants everything right now. And you go, but if you get it now, like if an open spot got the success that Matt Rife had tomorrow, they wouldn't have Matt Rife's career because they don't have anything to back it up. They couldn't do a tour tomorrow because they've not put the miles in.
With your first Australia festival tour after winning English Comedian of the Year, you would probably have went from doing like 5 or 10 in that competition to having to do like an hour over in Australia. Did you find that jump from like doing a bit or a series of bits, 5 to 10 minutes, to then doing a full hour quite difficult?
So at that point I was probably doing like 2015, I'd quit my job. I think I quit my job at the start of 2016. 2015, 2016. So I was doing 20s regular because again, when I started, it was like get your 20. It wasn't get your followers up. It was get your 20. So I worked really
and for the
hard.
listeners, like the kind of natural progression is like open spot 5 minutes to 10 minutes to 20, then to like maybe compare to then maybe your own show.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah. So you'd be, but 20 minutes seems, if you've got 20 minutes and it's good, you can be a professional comedian. So I'd be in some of the clubs, doing trial spots at places. So I was used to doing 20 minutes and the 20 minutes were good. Like it was good enough. But an hour is just a different beast, especially when you want to do something with an hour. Some people, when they do an hour show, will just do an hour of stuff, a really long extended set. Whereas I wanted, I guess coming from a theatre background, wanted to make a show. I think if you get given an hour, you probably should do something with it. And people do amazing stuff with it. People can tell these incredible stories. People can do mad shit like they could never do on a weekend at the stand because that's people's night out. So I kind of had a rough story, what I wanted to do. I kind of had a rough idea of how I wanted to present it. And then you speak to other comics and people are like, well, why are you doing that? And I think you've just got to have that real faith, especially in your first hour. You go, it's like a director of a film or a writer of screenplays being like an auteur and going, this is what I believe. Like, I imagine Quentin Tarantino seemed like a bit of a mad bastard when he was like, and then everyone dies and there's weird close-ups and really detached dialogue, but he just stuck with it, and that's why he's brilliant. And I think they're the best shows. They're the best anything when you go like, I've had a vision in my head. Surround yourself with a few people that you go like, oh, I trust your taste, and I trust, because it's all about taste. Trust your taste, and I trust that you can be honest with me and tell me about the structure. But I think you've just got to do what's in your head. Because if you start emulating other people, it already exists. And the thing you're probably already emulating, it exists to a high level because that's how you know about it.
I'm at the kind of point in my kind of juvenile stand-up comedy career where I'm doing like just 10 minutes. It's like finely polished and I like it and I'm happy to present it. But an hour feels like a marathon. It feels like I'm going from like a 5K or like a 100-meter race to a marathon to try and write something like that. What's the process in terms of like either both writing the material, because I'm presuming you would need maybe like an hour and a half, and then you would refine it down by like practicing it or trying it out?
I'd say it's the opposite, where you're like just adding on and stretching bits out and turning a 3-minute bit into a 5-minute bit. I don't know any comedian that goes, I've just got too much that I need to edit.
Really?
I think it gets to June, July, because the cycle, for anyone that doesn't know, the cycle of like comedy in the UK, which is changing a little bit, is people start sort of previewing their shows January, February, where you might go to a comedy festival or a room above a pub with all your notes and ideas and go like, here's the shit version. And it might make no sense, but you try and give it a go and you record it and you look back. And then by like, maybe like March, April, the show's sort of taking form. But when it's like June, July, I don't know any comic that isn't going, fuck, I need a bit more. I've got 40 minutes. No one's going, I've just got too much.
Really?
And I think the ones, if there are the handful of ones who are going, I've got too much, they haven't got enough, is my opinion. Yeah.
I heard a story about your first time. I don't know if it's your first time, but going to the Melbourne Comedy Festival, and you really didn't want to go, and you had your supportive family almost kind of drag you out of bed and force you to go.
Yeah.
What point in your life were you at during that moment?
I mean, it wasn't a great time. It's probably one of the toughest times where I'd never had anything bad happen in my life. Like, even though we grew up poor, we weren't all going like, aren't we also poor? Poor people just don't know they're poor because they're not around rich people. So you just go, this is what this is. So I had a great upbringing. I had, a supportive family. There was food, all that stuff. So I basically, within a weekend or two, I just had everything was bad, and it was in the run up to going over to Melbourne. And Melbourne Comedy Festival is a big deal. Like, it was the first time I was ever filming telly. You get paid well to go. I felt quite a lot of pressure to go and do a good job because someone's paid. And even though I'd been to Australia the year before, this was like a bigger deal. This was being taken by the people that run it. And I just didn't deal with it well. I just wasn't equipped to deal with any sort of trauma or any bad thing. So I was meant to be there for a month, and I was there for 5 days, and I got sent home because I was just wasn't sleeping, wasn't doing the job properly. And they, like, the people who run Melbourne Comedy Festival, I'll probably be in debt to forever, because if that was Edinburgh, and the Edinburgh model is quite bad, I think I would have been given a 10 grand bill at the end. And they just said, come back next year when you feel well. And they offered to pay for my flight, and I said no. And I used all the money that I've got to pay for a flight because I just felt bad. And then just didn't gig for like maybe nearly 6 months. Just didn't want to do it.
What are some of the behind the scenes mental health struggles of a life in stand-up comedy? Not everyone has to battle mental health to do stand-up comedy, but it's quite a common theme. Like, quite a lot of people either have had some sort of upbringing kind of traumas or hardships that they make light of. And then some others maybe just suffer from like mental health, and they kind of bring that to life on stage, or sometimes they mask it on stage. But the highs and lows in comedy are so high and so low. Like, you can be like selling out a show to 300 people on a Saturday and then doing like an open mic, for example, the next night if you're like a second comedian.
Like, I did it just before Christmas. One night, it was a couple of weeks before Christmas. One night I was doing a gig, closing a gig in like a cricket club. There was maybe 20 people. And then within less than 24 hours, I was doing a sold out Newcastle Arena. And you go like, there's not many jobs where that happens.
Like, does that tax like your mental health?
Maybe it used to, but I think that I think it comes in different stages. Like, when you start out as a comedian, some of the mental health problems are to do with being a bit jealous and wanting what other people have got. And there's lots of ego in there. But you're sort of riding high on the fact that everything's brand new. And then it gets to a point where you and your peers all sort of bottleneck. And I don't know what it's like when you're not the ones that get picked to go up the neck of a bottle. If you go like, sorry, you really want to be a comedian, but you're not very good, or you just can't make ends meet. I was always lucky with that. And then lots of like bitchiness. It's a very bitchy industry. And then for me, the mental health struggles come from like being on the road a lot and being burnt out and being, people go, isn't it glamorous that you get to be in a hotel? And I'm very lucky that where I've gigged this weekend, they put you in a hotel. Also, you're just in a hotel on your own in a city that you've been to 40 times. So it's not like, oh my God, I get to be in Glasgow. I love coming to Glasgow, but it's not like I'm not having a weekend away. So then it's trying to wrap your head around what do you do with your time and your money and and the people around you. And what I think for most comedians is it's either eating shit food, which makes you feel like shit, buying stuff, whether it's drugs or clothes. Mine was always clothes. I guess there's lots of drinking involved because it's a heavy culture of drinking. There's not many jobs that you can turn up to, and in the staff room there's a fridge full of beer. But I don't drink anymore. And then shagging because you're a male comedian, and people go, "Oh, you're good," and you want that attention, or it's like attention from crowd or from people sliding into your DMs. And I think they're the downfalls of comedians because you go, "I'm the king of the world," and you're not. You've just done a gig in a basement.
I've seen you open up online quite a lot about your mental health struggles recently, and I think it's usually admirable for a comic to do that because they're usually the jester and servant to make everyone else happy. And it's really refreshing to see someone online talk about it so openly, especially someone who's usually in the position to make others feel happy when they're going through kind of poor time.
Yeah, and I think it can be, some people can make it their brand, where they're like, I'm the mental health person, or I'm the victim, or I'm the person that's had lots of trauma. And I hope I don't do it like that. And who knows, maybe, but it's not a choice. But I do think that I've got loads of mates who are blokes who just don't do it. They just don't put them miles in. Like I go to therapy every week, and which I think whether it's going good or whether it's going bad, it's like going to the gym for your head. And I just think that it sounds really cliche when people are like, it's okay to be okay, and like you got to talk about it and you got to ask for it. But there's lots of people who just don't, like, especially from my dad's generation. People just don't talk about when they're feeling like shit, and you're not burdening anyone. You're just opening up about how you feel. And I think as long as it's done from the right place, and it's not me being like, I hope everyone clicks and likes this. I just think if you go like, if you're honest about anything, if you said today, if you came in here and you went, oh, I'm a bit hungover, then you've communicated and I can understand why you might be behaving a certain way. If you came in and you go, I feel a bit down today, I've just won the lottery. I think communication is so key in stand-up and in life. And not to get so up my own arse about it, but I just think that in a world now where it's like fast food communication, where I can message a mate and go like, hey, how are you? Hey, how are you? And no one's really conversing properly. That's when the mental health problems really start to kick in because everyone's burnt out and no one's said anything.
Totally agree. And it's both a blessing and a curse of this digital world. We can connect to more people than ever before, but because of the nature of that, especially someone with 50,000 odd followers, you probably have so many different open threads in terms of messages, WhatsApps, so many streams of communication that you can't be servant and full color to all of them. And even kind of everyday consumers of social media, they are always seeing people that they do not know with other people they do not know in places that they can't be with things they don't have. And they're too busy consuming that type of nature of content, but aren't nourishing maybe their conversation with their best friend because they're so distracted by this fast food consumption of social
like
media.
That. Like I go through phases of bits where I'm not one of those people where it's like, I'm leaving Facebook. You don't do that, but you just go like, some weeks, especially when you're on your own in a hotel room, blah, 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 and you just like doom scroll and you go, oh, look at their life, look at this life. But I think if you put that away, you realize that the things that you need, not the things that you want, the things that you need are usually, you've probably got them.
Yeah. And it's weird how we've went through this weird, the last maybe 20, 30 years. Like, I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse, but like our dad's generation, working class, like my dad's a veteran. They spent a lot of time growing up outdoors with mates. They were not playing Xbox inside. They weren't on social media. And yeah, they didn't have labels for these things back then. But I think growing up, their mental health, from what I remember, was typically okay. And then we've went through this kind of technologification, if that's a word, or this kind of advanced revolution of social media, whereby kids are feeling burnt out, anxious. There's a really good book called The Anxious Generation by a guy called Jonathan Haidt. And now people are paying to go on things like silent retreats or cold water, like being in touch with nature again. And we're now like paying to like remove ourselves from technology. It's a really weird bell curve that we're going through.
Yeah, it's wild.
You mentioned giving up drinking recently. I've not drank this year as well. Something I'm really trying to like focus on for the year ahead. What were your motivations for packing the booze?
It just wasn't making me feel that great. Like, I've never been a huge drinker, more of just like a social drinker. And I was just having like 3-day hangovers and just feeling bad about myself. So I was like, well, this doesn't feel great. And then I've got a few friends who are in like the fellowship and AA. So I don't do that because I'm not an addict. And I understand that some people are and it's a disease. But when I saw brilliant friends of mine, creative friends of mine who were maybe getting in their own way with booze and a good time, when they took that away, I was like, oh, their life seems infinitely better. So I just sort of was like, oh, maybe I'll just stop drinking for a bit. And that was like nearly 4 years ago, where I just go like, it's a bit like the social media thing when you like put the phone away or you put the cork back in the wine bottle. It allows for you to notice other things. It's like when people tell you to like look up and you're like, oh yeah, Glasgow can be beautiful. There's lots of old buildings. But you look down and you're like, this is a mess. So I think that I had the benefit of seeing the effect that it had on some close friends who were in much, much worse relationships with alcohol than I was. So then I just tried it and liked it and realized that, a bit like when I was talking about when I was at secondary school and people would be like, you're gay. People would go, have a drink. And I go, no. I'm pretty headstrong with that type of stuff where I just go like, I don't need to, I can still have a night out. And then there's tough bits where you stop being invited to stuff because people think that you're going to be boring or judging them. I've fell out with friends because they think that you're judging them because they've got their own demons about drinking. And I would never tell anyone to drink or not drink. I think everyone can do what they want. But it's made my life well better because I wake up and I know where I'm about to wake up and I know what I did yesterday. And like even last night I went out and I've not been out in ages, but I went out with some friends, had a great time, was home at 2. But I woke up this morning not just being like, oh, what did I do? Who did I say? Who have I kicked off with? What have I stolen? Like I just, yeah, it just feels better for me.
Totally agree, man. It's one of those drugs, especially in Glaswegian culture. It's one of those drugs whereby you're shamed for not taking it.
Yeah.
But no one like gives you a line of coke and you're like, oh, I'm off it, and then they'll shame you for that. But with booze, it's the opposite.
Because it's part of a culture. Yeah. Like it's a social thing, and I think that people think if you don't drink, they think that you think that you're better than them.
I think if we discovered alcohol now, it would be like a Class A drug. It wouldn't be commercialized and capitalized in the way it has been.
Because it has ruined loads of lives. This isn't me on my high horse, because I know lots of people that love drinking and they can drink till the cows come home and it doesn't affect their lives whatsoever. But it has also ruined a lot of people's lives. Yeah. So,
and yeah, I don't want to be that guy that's like, oh yeah, I'm preaching sobriety, because I'll probably drink again as well.
And there's nothing wrong with it. I think that, like, the same with anything. Having a McDonald's once a year, twice a year, 4 times, whatever. But when I was last year, I was eating it 3-4 times a week because I was just on the road. And that can't be good for you. But as a treat for anything, even if someone wanted to rub ketamine into their eyes, do it once a year and I'm sure it'll be fine.
This is not advice from a medical health professional. Get into the eyes. I love that.
I don't know how you take it. So.
Have you done it?
No.
No get into the eyes.
I have no interest in. I think the world's got enough going on. I don't need a heightened thing. Well, not even a heightened thing. It's a tranquilizer for a horse. I'm all right. And if you enjoy it, good for you. But I don't need it.
We talked about some serious topics there. I want to talk about some more lighter things. Were you on Top Gear or interviewed someone on Top Gear?
Yeah, so I got asked to go and do it. I got asked to go and do like a press thing years and years ago when they changed over the presenters. So it was like Chris Evans and Matt LeBlanc from Friends. Yeah. So there was a day when they invited lots of like creators, and I went on behalf of like Lad Bible, and I got to interview Matt LeBlanc and Chris Evans, and I also got to do like a few test drives, and there was all these other like proper YouTubers, and I got to do like things like star in a reasonably priced car, and then I got to do a test drive with a Stig. So everyone got maybe like 10 minutes with the Stig off the road to film some bits. So the video that we did was me like trolling the Stig, and basically just being like not great and asking him questions, and he was just sort of stood there. And then the payoff was that he was going to do his test drive, and he drove in this car called an Aerial Atom, and he just absolutely ragged it round this track, and it was terrifying. Like no windows, no doors, just like a frame, and it was like I could barely lift my head up because it was so fast. So then Lad Bible put that out, and then it went viral. Like it got something like 40 million views, and people really kicked off about it because it was lads being like, "You're gay. You shouldn't be allowed to do that," because they were all jealous that I got to do a test drive with a Stig, and didn't quite get the joke. And then because it went so viral, then I was asked to go on the show, and they played the clip and interviewed me about the day, and then made me read out the horrible tweets, which was fine. Like it was just people going like, "He's got big teeth. He's." I'm trying to think of what other ones. Like you need to hand your man card back in, and
oh Jesus,
and like it's just never bothered me. Anyone who like alpha males who think that they can outword me, like it's like why I think I'm very good at hecklers. I'm like, you won't win because you've never been punched in the face harder than I've been punched in the face, and you didn't go to a rough old boys school and get bullied. So I've kind of been prepping for this for a while. So it just bounces off me. I'm not really asked. So it's fun to go on that. Like it was, again, good experience.
Didn't you troll Matt LeBlanc and Chris Evans as well?
I did as a bit of, yeah, it was a joke. So I did it with Matt, and he got it. So I'd say things like, if you were a character in Friends, who would you be? And he really got it. He really understood that I was just a young lad trying to do a thing. And then Chris Evans was just a piece of shit. He was just a prick. And then we couldn't use the interview because he got so wound up that I was being silly, I guess.
Do you remember what you said to him?
I think the turning point was I was pointed out that I said, "Oh, you've been out with a lot of celebrities. You've been out with Carol McGiffin from Loose Women and Billie Piper." And I said, "Is it safe to say that you haven't got a type? Because they're very different looking women." And he took his mic off and he stormed off.
Jeez.
Yeah. So yeah.
Some of your TV moments have been awesome. One of my favorites is the roast battle you did. It's one of my favorite roasts I've ever seen online. It was savage.
Yeah. I love a roast. I think they're great. I think it's one of the nicest things you can do to another comedian if they are willing to play the game. And I think most people are. It's like a love language amongst comedians because you hear it in car shares, green rooms, podcasts, like that. I don't really like the term like banter, but that type of thing where you go like, I'm going to take the piss out of you because we've gigged around for 10 years and you could take the piss out of me, but we all know it comes from a place of jokes. No one's really being that mean. So it was fun. I had to do a few auditions for it with different other comics. And I think that there is like a very like playground tactic way of doing it. It's just like your mum jokes. And I, again, probably going to that school prepped me for having that type of sense of humor, and dealing with hecklers for a living gives me that type of sense of humor. And it was great. Yeah, it was good fun.
How was doing live at the Apollo?
Yeah, it was an amazing moment. Like I was very lucky to get picked to do it because I didn't know it was on the cards. I found out the day before I did Edinburgh. Then wasn't allowed to tell anyone all the way through Edinburgh Festival. And I remember I filmed it on the September the 11th. And I'd done that room a few times before, so I was kind of lucky. I'd done it on tour support I did it for Joe Lycett a couple of times. I did it for Nick Offerman a couple of times. I did it for Mickey Flanagan a couple of times. So I was like, okay, I can do the gig. I've done this room. And then when you're stood behind the big sign and there's just like a gaffer taped square on the floor and you can hear the show going on, you think, this could be a real like moment. And I just wanted to enjoy it. Like I had maybe like 20 family and friends come along, which felt like quite a nice moment for them because they'd supported me throughout the years when things weren't great. And I'd really practiced that. Like it was about having that 20. I think I did 25 actually, and then they cut it down to like 8 minutes. And I did the best that I could. It was great. And it like, because I was so used to being on that stage, I was like able to use the stage. I felt I'd give the best performance. I felt I did the best that I could when did I do it? 2018? 2018? Like that was the best material I had then. And some comics look back and they go, oh, well, I wouldn't have done that. It's like, well, you didn't have the other bits. You picked what you thought was best and it was great. And it allowed me to have lots of opportunities. So yeah, it was good.
Again, going back to that analogy of the two guys shoveling for the diamond, it's insane that you almost packed comedy in like a few years before that.
Yeah, and it'll be the case for lots of people. And it might be the case for someone who quits tomorrow who might end up, could have got a show on whatever. But that might not be their path, and that might not be the thing that makes them happy. I thought being on TV would make me really happy, and not always.
Do some comics use comedy or stand-up comedy as like a stepping stone to TV and acting gigs and presenting gigs? Do you find there is some people that don't respect perhaps the craft in the same way like a natural born comedy nerd might?
Maybe, but like, I mean, there's no rules for it. Like, I love it and I care about it and I love watching old comedy and I love talking about comedy. And some people just go, yeah, that's a gateway to acting. And I think that used to bother me a while ago. That's my stomach. Yeah, it used to bother me about that people would use it for a stepping stone. And I just think, why? Like, it's not my business. Do it how you want. Like, I'm sure Adidas aren't having a go at Nike for how they do their laces. Like, just make them how you want. And then you have to pay the price. So some people will get rid of it all and become a presenter and not put the work into stand-up, and then the presenting job will stop, and then they'll try and get back in stand-up, and they'll be shit.
Do you think comedy can be taught? Like, I think about music, for example. Like, sheet music exists. You can read notes. I don't think there's like a manual for comedy.
I mean, there's books out there. I think you can. It's not the comedy I love. I like it when you get a real sense of the person where you're like, oh, I didn't know that about you. But there's like, I call them like telesales comics. There's people that can learn. You can learn a rule of three and you can learn a premise and you can sell it. You can sell me a premise and you can sell me a 20 minutes. Loads of those people exist. But the best ones, the Billy Connolly's of the world, are the ones who just look at the world a little bit different.
In Scotland specifically, there's government bodies that are pulling funding away from the performing arts. There seems to be a kind of shift economically away from these government agencies supporting like comics and actors and screenwriters. The industry, especially in Scotland, has a bit of a bad rap because of that. If there's someone listening, even maybe myself, who loves comedy, loves acting, loves screenwriting, who wants to get into the creative arts, but feels like the infrastructure around it isn't supporting it, do you have any tips or words of advice or insights into how you think they should navigate that? It's a bit of a deep kind of self-development question, but
I'd say that you're just finding another excuse. Not you specifically. I just mean, the arts are really underfunded. Comedy's not included in the arts, even though it's the biggest thing at the world's biggest arts festival. But what do you need? Like, if you want to be a comic, what do you need? Do you need you don't even need a microphone. You need to go to a gig and do the stuff. You need a pen and a piece of paper or your phone. Everyone's got a phone. Well, I need to film my gigs on the best camera. No, you don't. Just film your gig on your phone. It's a really good, I think this is me going starving. I wonder if that picks it up on the microphone. But I think that comics, and I'm only saying this because I worked in comedy, it might be the same with chefs, photographers, and anything else, will find every excuse to not do the work because I need the right pen and I need the right program and I need it's thoughts. All you need to do is do the thoughts and package it well and work really hard at the writing of it. And yeah, you might need to read a book on understanding how you craft an hour or 20 minutes, but I don't think it's ever been easier to be a really good stand-up, because imagine trying to be a stand-up in the 80s and going what's my reference point? There's a thing called YouTube that's got every gig that's ever happened on it. There's Spotify. It's got loads of comedy albums. People are releasing specials. I just think people are focusing on the wrong thing. So if people are out there going, comedy's really hard, I think it's never been easier because all the stuff's there.
I love that. And I think the process of performing stand-up is the ultimate form of intelligence. There's very few disciplines where you get such an instant feedback loop and get to learn on the spot as you're doing the thing. It's awesome.
And you can do it 6 times a week. You can do it 12 times a night. You can do, the gigs exist. It's just whether your ego's in the way.
Yeah, and you're willing to travel.
Yeah, you've got to.
Yeah, I love it. And comics are so profound in sharing half-baked ideas. They'll turn up to an open mic and be like, this smells like a bit, but it's not quite ready yet. I'll perform it and see if it works. If it doesn't work, they'll go to a gig the next night and they'll just tweak a word or remove something and then try it again. And over the period of 4 weeks, they go from something that's kind of fat and not lean to a really solid, tight 5-10 minutes.
Yeah. And if you write 5 minutes every month, if you can do that every month and get 5 minutes, 5 minutes is a lot. You have a new hour every year.
I love it. Brennan, this has been such a fun podcast. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of you. I'm coming to see your show probably in a couple of hours' time after this. What should we expect from that show? Hopefully this will be released in time for your other dates, if anyone's listening. What should we expect in your show?
It's just it's a good interactive hour of comedy around why I love jokes, and it's a good story. It's a bit rude, but yeah, it's a good show.
And if you want to see Brennan, I think this is the last chance you're able to see you this year. You're only doing your tour, right?
Yeah. So I've got a couple of gigs next week, a couple of tour shows. I'm up in Edinburgh in June doing my tour, and then Glasgow today.
Brennan, this has been great.
Thanks very much. Cheers.